The last thing we want is a letdown in Charlotte. I asked the guys about that at practice. Plus, Nik Stauskas is part of the team now, and I actually think he could help, but maybe not in the way that you're thinking. And Isaiah Thomas talks about wanting to come back, why he shouldn't, again, is coming up right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine and your first listen every day. It's free for you Monday through Friday. So wherever you get your podcasts, if you're new to the show, find Locked On Celtics wherever you get your podcasts, or go to lockedonceltics.com. You'll see all the places that it can exist. You can also watch the show on YouTube. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. Search for Locked On Celtics there. I'm John Karalis. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I also cover the team for Boston Sports Journal. I'm a credentialed beat writer, and I was one of the media voters for the 75th anniversary team. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Celtics had practice on Tuesday. I was there talking to a few of the guys and Ime Udoka. I'll get to that in just a second. Just the big story there. The big thing I'm worried about is a letdown in Charlotte. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Later on in the third segment, I'll get into the Nik Stauskas conversation. He was made available. He just signed a 2-year deal. I'll talk about that deal in the third segment. Second segment, I will reserve for Isaiah Thomas, who spoke in Charlotte. He's now part of the Charlotte Hornets, signed a 10-day contract there. So obviously, he was of interest to the media. I'll talk about that in the next segment and really why Ime Udoka explained why the Celtics didn't even bother going for Isaiah Thomas. That's coming up next. First, I talked to some of the players at practice and talked to Grant Williams and Ime Udoka, and specifically asking about a letdown. And the one thing that I'm worried about here is that this is a classic letdown situation for the Celtics, that the Celtics have this big win against Brooklyn, a win over Memphis, a win over Atlanta, and everybody's gassing them up, right? Everybody's gassing up Jayson Tatum. Tatum suddenly, sneaking into the MVP conversation. People are saying the Celtics are sneaking into contender conversation. Ime Udoka is sneaking into Coach of the Year conversation. And while I don't expect I don't expect Ime to win Coach of the Year. I don't expect Tatum to get any meaningful MVP votes. He could get into the first team All-NBA. But here we are with the Celtics at a completely 180 degrees from where they were just a couple months ago. We've talked about this. I've written about this on Boston Sports Journal, that the Celtics have been surprising. And to, maybe different people have different levels of being surprised by the Celtics, but they are still surprising nonetheless to some degree. Now they come off of these 3 wins, and these are 3 very important wins. I think the way they won these 3 games, you have Atlanta. Now Atlanta is supposed to be better than they are. Their record is terrible. They're playing like crap, but they've got talent, and they were up 14 on the Celtics. And the Celtics came back in the second half. They messed around in the first half. They came back in the second half, 14-0 run. We've talked about that. And then in that second half, holding the Hawks to 30-something points defensively, just really honing in on the stuff they were supposed to do, come back in the second half. Then against Memphis, they had some early turnovers, but that was a game that they controlled defensively. That was a real strong top-to-bottom defensive effort. If they didn't have those turnovers early in the game, that would have been a much easier, more comfortable game for the Celtics. But they still had control of that from beginning to end, showing what they could do against an upstart good team. Then against Brooklyn, a different kind of win. an offensive kind of win behind your star player, Jayson Tatum, or your superstar player, Jayson Tatum. One of your other stars pitches in and you're scoring, you're outscoring an opponent. You adjust defensively, the blitzing that I've talked about. Those three different kinds of wins are three different kinds of wins that you're really going to find in maybe a playoff series. This is very indicative of how they could win a playoff series. You have one game where you trail, you have to come back. You have another game where you're in total control and you just impose your will. You have another game where you have to go out there and you have to just outgun them. Celtics have shown over the last three games, the first 3 games of March, that they have a capability against these different types of teams of doing one of these things. And if you do that in a series and you're up 3-1 or 3-2 or 3-3, if it's tied, you have at least demonstrated you can win these different ways, and all you got to do is gut out another win. So that's great. I'm talking about this in terms of moving forward into the playoffs. The Celtics are hearing it, they're reading it, they're seeing it. You know, I'm sure their social media is full of all this praise. And Brad Stevens last year or the year before, but he one of the things that he has said regularly is it's just as hard to deal with excessive praise as it is excessive criticism. We all focus on the excessive criticism of players. Pick somebody, Aaron Nesmith, for example, a guy who is struggling to find his way, has not quite found his groove this season. And there's the excessive, like, is he a bust? Is he this? Is he that? Like, that's tough to deal with. Just as difficult in some ways is the excessive, wow, you're the man. You are awesome. What a season you're having. You know, like the Tatum or even Grant Williams to a degree, that feeling of, wow, I'm so great. Look at me out there. Whew, brush your shoulders off, you know, that type of thing. And you go out there and you suck after you get that feeling. That feeling of satisfaction takes away from your drive. It makes you a step slow. You get that smug smirk on your face. You're not that killer mentality. That can hurt a team. And so that's what my concern is with the Celtics going into the Charlotte game. That after these 3 wins, the 3 different types of wins, the comeback, the basically wire to wire, and then the shootout, the narrative around this team is, all right, well, you're so great. And the Celtics are going to walk into Charlotte and be like, hey, Charlotte, have you heard? We're so great. So why don't you guys all just lay down and let us be great? And that's a recipe for disaster. Now, Ime has said, and Grant said in this media session, like, you want to avoid that by focusing on what you need to do and understanding that you did certain things well against Brooklyn, but you didn't do these things well. You did certain things against Memphis, but you didn't do these things well. You still have yet to put together all of these things. And even though you won, there are things you can do better. And hey, let's go back and look at some of these Charlotte games. And you've seen, if you let down, then this is what happens. You walk in feeling like you're God's gift, you're going to get smacked. You're going to get smacked early, and it's going to be tough to come back because a team like Charlotte is going to have a ton of confidence. You do not want to get LaMelo and Rozier and all of those guys, and Isaiah Thomas, if he gets in, you do not want to get these guys confident and motivated, because this is a big win if the Charlotte Hornets can get it. The standings are close, and Charlotte has fallen into the 8th seed in the play-in. Now, I don't know if they're going to catch Cleveland, but they want to avoid dropping down to 9th and 10th. They're tied with Brooklyn right now. So Charlotte needs these wins, and Charlotte has fallen, but they're not out of it. Now, they also don't want to fall out of it altogether, because Washington is sitting right there, and the Knicks have a very outside chance. I don't think they're going to make it, but the Wizards are certainly knocking on the door. So Charlotte's motivated here. Charlotte has reason to really want to play hard. Each game is very, very meaningful for them. Boston sits here a half game out of 4th. depending on how Chicago does in their game on Wednesday night, and they play the Detroit Pistons, who, by the way, are doing pretty well. They won on Monday night. They've been beating teams. The Pistons are kind of playing pretty well, especially for the Pistons. So probably not a game that Chicago should worry about, but it's not a game that's going to be easy. So theoretically, there's a way for the Celtics to flip into fourth with a win. And what you don't want if you're Boston is to miss these opportunities to get that home court. They're going to be fighting for home court, just like we thought they were at the beginning of the season, fighting for home court. Charlotte's fighting for their lives, their playoff lives. The Celtics have to buy into what Ime is telling them. They have to buy into it and believe that they have work to do here. They still have work left to do. They cannot believe that they are sitting here, God's gift. You walk into Charlotte, this has letdown written all over it. And I don't want them to see, if they can go into Charlotte and take control early, then that's a really, really good sign of Ime having his finger on the pulse that guys are buying into. I mean, we've seen it. I don't want to say that everything is a referendum on Ime, but this is still, because of the way the first couple of months went, there's still a little bit of a lack of belief. And there's still, even in my confidence in talking about these guys moving forward as potential contenders in a path out of the East, there's still that little bit of me, because half the season has sucked and the other half has been great. And we're in the great half and it feels like everything is trending upward, but you're still waiting. Like, let's just make sure that you've learned your lessons from earlier this season, that you've learned that Charlotte is going to be desperate, that you understand that they're going to play fast. And if you're not careful, they're going to run. And if you're loose with the ball, they're going to steal it and build big leads on you. And once those shots start falling for them, watch out. Got to jump on them early. So my big question and answer with these guys at practice was, will there be a letdown? How do you avoid a letdown? And they swear that we're focusing on ourselves. We have seen what happens. The winning streak shows us what happens when things are going great and we play great. In those losses we had earlier this season, or when we relax. We'll see what is reality when I'm back for the postgame podcast tomorrow, because I will be here for a postgame podcast. Now, we'll see if Isaiah Thomas has any say in the matter. Isaiah Thomas is a member of the Charlotte Hornets, but if you listen to him on Tuesday, it sounded like he really wanted to be a member of the Boston Celtics. I will talk about that when I come back. First, let's talk about daily fantasy, and you need to try the award-winning PrizePicks app. It's daily fantasy made easy. I know I've talked to a lot of people who love this. It's a very simple game to play. It's you against the numbers. You go over to prizepicks.com or download the app. You can choose two or more players from the board that you see. You pick an over-under based on their projected fantasy score or a single stat. You can choose flex, which is a little bit easier. Power play, where you got to get it all right. Flex is a little easier to win. Power play is a little harder, but you get rewarded for that. And you can just go on through and say, hey, I want to pick John Morant. His over-under is 29.5 points. So boom, that's one of the games that's going on. You can pick Jayson Tatum tomorrow. You can go to college. You can split sports. When football is back, you can pick, Patriots and Celtics. You can go all over the place. It's can be done in 60 seconds or less. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. And again, you versus the projected numbers. This is the best part of it, because you aren't going up against some dude with, decided wants to rig some high-powered computer and run algorithms and beat you in daily fantasy. It's you versus the numbers. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive, no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. You've got to use the code NBA. This is basically free money, but you got to use the code NBA. It's an exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today Use the code NBA, $50 free if a player in your PrizePicks entry scores a single point. So go pick up the PrizePicks app in either App Store, Google Play, or at prizepicks.com. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making Locked On Now your second listen every day for recaps from both sides of each game in the NBA? It's a great way to get caught up on everything that you missed in the NBA the night before. Recaps and analysis from our local experts wherever you get your podcast. It's free, available daily, and it's on YouTube at the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. Isaiah Thomas spoke to the media on Tuesday. He is a member of the Charlotte Hornets. And of course, whenever Isaiah Thomas comes up and he's playing Boston, the questions come out, right? He was asked again about Boston, his relationship with Brad Stevens and all of that. And he said flat out, well, and I was on the radio on Tuesday and asked, like, why doesn't Isaiah Thomas just let it go? Well, partly because he keeps getting asked these questions. He wherever he is, whenever a connection to Boston comes up, he's asked about it. And Isaiah is an emotional, passionate guy. He's never really said, I don't want to talk about this. He answers. People ask the question, so he answers the media's questions. And so he was asked again, and part of what he said was that he's tried to have conversations about coming back to Boston. He said, it's always hard to speak on because I've opened my arms to try to come back in so many ways, and it's not even about playing and trying to pick up where I left off. I'm past that, but there's been times where I can help in that locker room. And the entire tone of his answer was, I can help you. And I don't need to play. And he wants to play. He says, I want to play. I feel like I can play. I feel like I can be really impactful. If I get that opportunity, I'm going to run with it. But I don't have to play. If I don't play, I can help guys on the bench. I can help guys on the coaching staff. I can help in the locker room and all of that. He loves Boston. And Boston loves Isaiah Thomas. And I look at Isaiah Thomas, I'm like, this dude, you can't not love this guy. You cannot root for this guy. Like, you can't not root for this guy. I'll make sure I had that. I don't think the T came out when I first said that. You can't not root for this guy. He is passionate. He loves the game. He loves the city of Boston. He feels like he's part of the city. The fans have shown him so much love. And he would, of course, love to come back to Boston. And man, on so many levels, it feels like, of course you want to bring him back, because why wouldn't you want to have this passion, dedication, that level, that work ethic to push guys in practice, all of that stuff? I know all of that stuff. I will concede that is a good point. If he's sitting there saying, like, I just want to be in a Celtics uniform and I will help in practice, like a pseudo coach, all of that stuff, then I get it. And there's a part of me, a good part of me, that says, man, I buy it. But it's obvious that when Ime Udoka said, when he was asked, he said, point guard was never really a position of need. With Marcus playing at the level that he is, Peyton getting the opportunity, Derek being able to do some, as well as Jaylen and Jayson handling quite a bit, point guard was never really a position of need. And so the Celtics have limited spots, even though they opened up a few spots after the trade deadline. They have limited spots, and they filled every one of those spots with the same type of guy. Stauskas, Ryan, the 10-day guys. They upgraded Sam Hauser. They're all 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", shooters, switchable type of guys. So if somebody goes down, let's just say someone on the wing goes down. Tatum sprains an ankle, Jaylen's ankle acts up, and he misses 2-3 games. And you've got to plug somebody in. And they can go to a guy and they say, look, obviously you're not one of the guys that we just lost, but we can plug you in. And if this guy doesn't work, then we've got another guy we can try to plug him in. And if that doesn't work, we can try to plug this guy in. It's almost like trying batteries. Like your device dies and you've got a bunch of loose batteries. And you're like, well, let's see, is this one still got some juice in it? Does this one have any juice in it? And you figure out which one has some juice in it, and then you can power up again. That's basically what the Celtics have been looking for. Someone who can shoot and someone who can switch defensively. And Isaiah Thomas is neither of those. So Isaiah is not going to play. Ime has said multiple times when asked about his defense, there are no weak spots on our defense. There are no holes in our defense. He's proud about that. Isaiah Thomas is going to come in and be the immediate, obvious, glaring weak spot on the defense. No matter how little he plays, the second he touches the floor, he's the glaring weak spot. So Ime doesn't want that on his team. Sorry, right? And then, okay, so you say, let's bring in IT anyway, because you've got an extra spot and the emotional boost is going to be worth it. And all the other stuff I just said about helping players in the locker room and all that stuff is going to be worth it. But what ends up happening is it's a 14-point game midway through the fourth quarter, and Isaiah Thomas becomes, Taco Fall, the inverse of Taco Fall, right? Instead of the tallest player on the floor, he's the smallest player on the floor, and he's getting that same treatment, though. We want IT. We want IT. That's what you're going to hear. And I think that's the last thing that Ime would want. He just wants to go forward with his team and focus on playing good basketball and not having a guy like Isaiah Thomas be reduced to a sideshow. And that, I think, it would be disrespectful to bring in Isaiah and subject him to that and put him on the bench and have him listen to "We Want IT" chants, which people in the stands would good-naturedly, they want to see Isaiah Thomas play, but ultimately it becomes a little disrespectful because he's sitting there and he has to listen to this and be like, yeah, do I get to play or not? And he's like, yeah, dude, you're never going to play. And you just don't want to put him in that situation. You just don't. And that's what sucks. Like I would love the vision of Isaiah Thomas back in Boston, but I just don't see it making any sense. And I'm not going to, I don't want to put Isaiah in that spot as much as he might be like, no, I'm cool with that. I think if he was in that spot, he might realize like, ooh, I'm not as cool with that as I thought. And because then he's going to have to talk to the media and we're going to always be requesting him. And then I'm going to be asking, I got to do a story on Isaiah Thomas, or I'm going to be told, hey, you need to do a story on Isaiah Thomas. And he's an end of bench guy. And then we're just dredging all the old stuff up. And then we got to talk about the injury. We got to talk about the tragedy of his sister. And we got to talk about all of that stuff over and over and over again. It's just not worth it. Let it go. I hope you do well in Charlotte. I hope you do wherever you end up. I hope you do well. Boston is just not in the cards. And I hope that moving forward, Isaiah can just be like, you know what? It's done. And it's not personal. It's just done. And Brad loves Isaiah Thomas. Brad lights up. Brad Stevens lights up when he talks about Isaiah Thomas. But it's just not going to fit. It's not going to work in Boston. Nik Stauskas is hoping he'll work in Boston, but he's actually cool coming off the bench too, cool sitting on the bench. And he brings some interesting perspective. And I will talk about that in just a moment. First, Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. Grab yourself a Built Bar. If you're in a rush in the morning, grab one, grab your coffee, head out the door, bring one with you to the gym. If you're getting in a quick workout afterwards, you can have a Built Bar. It gets the protein in your body without a ton of calories. Generally speaking, you're getting 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and about 17 grams of protein in a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's covered in chocolate. It's delicious, and they come in a ton of different flavors where if you like fruity stuff or coconut or peanut butter or any of that, like it's all there for you. Go to built.com and check it out because you can see all the flavors. And if you scroll over the flavors, you'll see the nutritional information because they are not hiding anything about these Built Bars or any of the other products that are out there. They've got a ton of great products like Built Puffs, which is basically a protein marshmallow, which blows my mind. But I'm not big into the marshmallows. You might be, so you can get Built Puffs instead. I'm going for the Built Bar. And you can go and use the promo code LOCK15, just like I use the promo code LOCK15 Every time. I keep on using it. Keeps on working. Every single time. Pick a flavor, pick a mixed box, stock up, pick a bunch of different things. However you want to do it, you can go to built.com as often as you want. And as often as you go, use that promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your order every single time at built.com. Nik Stauskas is a new Celtic, and he spoke to the media on Tuesday. He signed a 2-year contract, which, to the best of my knowledge, is a non-guaranteed second year, which will the trigger date will be somewhere around training camp next year. So he will have an opportunity to either stick around or be useful in a trade or something. So right now, 2-year deal. Look, if the Celtics use some of their players in a big trade and they need just end of bench depth, then Stauskas can be the guy. I know Brad Stevens likes Nik Stauskas. So yeah, you keep him there as an end of bench depth piece. He just scored 57 and 43 points in consecutive games in the G League. He's got some NBA experience. We know that Ime Udoka loves guys with some NBA experience because at least those guys know. Those guys know what to expect. As much as even Aaron Nesmith, like Aaron Nesmith is still impacted by getting in the game and trying too hard and trying to establish himself. Stauskas is, I think, in a mental place now where he's just like, you know what? I'm cool. What do you need me to do? I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm not going to try to do too much. Whatever you need me to do, just let me know. You need me to wave a towel at the end of the bench? Then I'm waving that towel, baby. Oh, you need me to come in and try and hit a couple of threes? No problem. I'm here to shoot too. So, and that's what he was talking about. Like, he spent 5 years in the league and then was gone. And he was a 8th overall pick. And you know, so he's viewed as this bust, and he falls out of the league. And he said, you know, for the first few years of my time in the NBA, I'm sitting on the bench and it's affecting my mood. It's affecting my relationships. And I'm really getting down on myself. And then the NBA gets taken away and he goes overseas and he goes to the G League. And he told us, hey, 5 days ago, I was thinking about if this doesn't work out this time, I'm cool with walking away. He's married. He's got a kid on the way. His first kid is on the way. And he's thinking, I can't drag my wife and my pregnant wife all over creation, just like we talked about with Derek White. And he was just traded from San Antonio to Boston. So he's got a lot more kind of, I know I was this place, now I'm here, and it's very, just move things this way. And it's tough for a new mom to switch doctors, but imagine being a new mom and being like, okay, we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Okay, now we're in Boston, or we were in Miami. Like, which doctor do I go to? And that's the most important thing. Like, a mom having a consistent OBGYN for her first child. Her first child is a pretty scary, nerve-wracking thing. You don't know what the hell you're doing. And Nik Stauskas is sitting there going like, you know what? I'm chasing this dream. And like, I've done it for 5 years. I played overseas. And if I can see him coming to this conclusion, like, you know what? I'm going to find something else. I've made money. I'm sure he's not like desperate for money. It's not Jayson Tatum money, but I'm sure he's got some money lying around where it's like, okay, we can figure something out and have a decent life and just sit in one place and have a kid and raise a kid. And then, so I can see him saying, all right, here's the deal. This season's almost over. If I can't, like, Miami signed him to a 10-day and that ran out and he went back to the G League. He said, if I can't do it at the end of this season, then fine. I'm fine with it. So he gets a call from Boston. Brad Stevens is a fan. He says, all right, 2-year deal, non-guaranteed second year. Those are the kind of deals that get thrown around at this time of year. You want to get some stability. You know, you're hoping like, hey, if you get a guy like Stauskas and he comes in and has this new like outlook on life, as he said to us, is like, now that I get this back, I'm just happy to like do whatever, man. whatever you need me to do, I'm cool with it. And if that allows him to play free, and then he comes in, and next thing you know, he's just like knocking down 4 threes in a game. You put him in because Peyton Pritchard, got sick, non-COVID illness. You're like, okay, we need somebody. Nik, get on in there. And he bangs a few threes. You're like, oh, whoa, okay. Let's try him again in this next game. Let's try him again in Detroit. Bangs a few more threes. Like, oh, okay, we found something. Well, now you pick up that guarantee and you have him for next year at the reduced price. Or he becomes valuable in a trade or something, but at least you have some value there. So that's why those contracts are that way. You have some stability, you give the guy some money, and you have like flexibility with that contract. He may never see the floor. I don't know if he's ever going to play because Ime's got the guys that he trusts. But again, you just don't know when someone's going to step wrong, on the floor. You slip on a wet spot and miss a week. You just never know. And having these guys with certain skills, very specific skills that you can slot in there are important. And Stauskas with the NBA experience and this new perspective, which, look, not only is he sitting there saying like, hey, I'm just going to let it fly and let's hope for the best. I'm just happy to be back. That perspective, you don't even understand. That perspective, that feeling on the court can really like let somebody just be loose and free and like, okay, whatever I need to do. Because if you're putting pressure on yourself, if the old Nik Stauskas is missing a few shots and he's like, oh my God, now I'm getting benched. Now I'm getting a DNP, and like he's losing his mind. Now he's like, I wasn't in the league before, and I was cool with not being in the league before I got this signature, this contract. Then let's roll with it. And let's see that little freedom, man. It just lets you you get a little looser in the shoulders. It's meaningful. It's meaningful, especially for a shooter. Relaxed is the shooter's best friend. And hey, there are some guys in this locker room that could maybe benefit from hearing the story of a top 10 pick losing his spot and like potentially having it all go away. Maybe even an Aaron Nesmith could hear the Stauskas story and be like, just dude, relax. The more pressure you put on yourself, the worse you're going to feel. Just relax, let it happen. Just relax and let it go and do whatever's asked of you and just trust yourself and let it go. There are guys who can benefit from that level of perspective. I'm a fan of that stuff. I really believe in that psychology. And I think that stuff is helpful. And I'm happy that Nik Stauskas has gotten to that point and, makes you want to root for the guy. And hopefully he and his family can get like a little bit of redemption here and he can go out there and earn another contract and stick around on the periphery and make benches in the NBA and be a scorer. And hell, maybe the Celtics are going to be the situation that works for him. And maybe he becomes a key role player for the Celtics moving forward. We'll see. It could go either way with him, but I thought it was very interesting to hear his perspective. And it really does make you want to say, okay, you know what? Let's go Nik. I want I like that feeling that he's got. And let's now that he's got it, let's hope for the best. I'll be back after the Charlotte game. Who knows what's going to happen in that Charlotte game? So there's going to be plenty to talk about there. And I'll have Tom back to wrap up the week on Thursday. So mixing in different perspectives here on the show too, trying to give you the best possible podcast because, hey, that's what we do here. We want to entertain you. We want to give you information. We want to have you kind of just join in. And hopefully if you're listening in the car, you're talking back to me or in the shower or walking your dog. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching the show, hope you're enjoying the show on YouTube. We're close to 4,400 subscribers. I want to get it up to 5,000. I'm hoping by the end of the season. So 5,000 by the end of the season would be huge. And then we can hit the next milestone after that. But would love to get more YouTube subscribers. It'd be great. And if you are a subscriber, either way, I would love it when I tweet things out or share it myself, that you retweet or reshare or just share it on your own. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. They should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.